everyone. Good afternoon from Jakarta. My name is Kiara and I will be the Master of Ceremony for today's event. Welcome to FPCI GRIP's virtual public forum on taking stock of RCEP scorecard and other regional economic architecture. Today's event is the second forum of this year's virtual public forum series brought to you by Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia in collaboration with the National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies, GRIPS, Japan. Today, I am pleased to welcome around 400 participants tuning in to our channels from across Indonesia and also from abroad. We have attendees from 27 countries, including Japan, the Philippines, Malaysia, Nigeria, the United States, Saudi Arabia, Bulgaria, Sri Lanka, and many more. Before we continue, I would like to inform you that we provide live interpretation from English to Japanese. If you are joining from Zoom, you can click on the bottom right of your screen for language options. Ladies and gentlemen, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership was concluded and signed by all parties in the time of COVID-19 pandemic. Hence, people are expecting the economic framework to help fostering regional and global economic recovery, as well as strengthening the regional economic resilience. Now, we are also aware of the existence of other economic frameworks in the region, such as CPTPP and IPEF. How do all of these economic frameworks work together to address current challenges? And what is the update of RCEP since 2020? As I am sure everyone is excited to jump into the discussion, without further ado, let us begin today's event with a welcoming remark by Ambassador Sumadi Brotodiningrat, former Indonesian ambassador to Japan and senior fellow at Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia. To Ambassador Sumadi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tiara, for your welcome. And it's my turn now to welcome all participants to this discussion. And also special welcome to the speakers. We have four distinguished speakers with us who will speak substantively about the subject. And of course, particularly I would like to send my greeting to Shinoda Sensei, Shinoda Kuniko Sensei. He represents the GRIPS, and I really appreciate the GRIPS for sharing with us this important initiative to hold this discussion. Well, as we may recall, the RCEP agreement's entry into force at the beginning of this year was somehow clouded by the international with the challenging international situations, and especially the pandemic. And as such, this highly significant regional event, that should have been very important regional event, has been somewhat sidelined from the public attention. So this discussion is thus a welcome and timely opportunity for the public to get an update on RCEP developments. And I am looking forward to the more substantive presentations by our distinguished expert speakers. As for me, I will use my 5 minutes to make brief general observations on RCEP, let me abbreviate it, RCEP's expected role. For the first observation, I take the most urgent one, i.e., what role that we expect RCEP to play to help facilitate post-COVID pandemic recovery. On this, I agree with Dr. Mari Pangestu, Managing Director of the World Bank and former Indonesian Trade Minister, when she wrote in her recent article that RCEP could play a vital role in revitalizing global commerce and spurring growth in developing countries. This action in the trade area is indeed essential to complement measures taken by the G20 in the sorry for technical problems, in the monetary and financial sector. And indeed, RCEP, with 30% of the world population, 30% of global GDP, and some 28% of world trade, should be strong enough to push back the current advancing protectionist pressures or protectionism trends. Another role that perhaps we can expect from RCEP to play is its potential to mitigate the adverse effects of major powers' economically harmful strategic competition. This, inter alia, stems from the fact that RCEP is an economic partnership characterized by pluralistic inclusivity, accommodating partners with different economic practices and political orientations. Besides, it is very unlikely that RCEP will end up to become a monolithic trading bloc when 9 out of 15 of its members are at the same time parties to the CPTPP, and where the majority of them are also having bilateral trade agreements among themselves. And lastly, I would like to pinpoint one role that RCEP could be expected to play, namely, and this I'm speaking sometime in the longer run, and this namely as a main facilitator for regional economic integrations. As I see it, RCEP could play this role through 3 traditional free trade components, i.e., the rules component, the market access commitment component, and the capacity building cooperation component. The rules component seems to be at the forefront in doing its part through the successful negotiated harmonizations of the rules of origin, which is a concrete and effective instrument to facilitate market integration. In the market access component, expectation is particularly placed in the investment, where harmonized rules of origin will ensure the smooth operations of the regional supply chain needed for multi-participant projects. In the longer run, the capacity building component could play its role in facilitating regional integrations through, i.e., harmonization of standards, as well as human resources development and technical cooperation. Well, my 5 minutes are almost up. So let me just close my brief observations by wishing all the best for the RCEP implementations and hope it will help ensure regional stability and the developments of the contracting parties, as well as the prosperity of their people. Thank you very much. Ohayo gozaimashita. Arigato gozaimashita.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for your welcoming remarks. Okay, to proceed, I would now like to give the floor to Professor Kunihiko Shinoda, Professor and Executive Advisor of GRIPS Alliance at National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies. Professor Shinoda, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Eve Chiara. And Your Excellency, Ambassador Smadi Brotodiningrat, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you so much for joining us today at the second FPCI GRIPS Public Forum co-organized by FPCI and GRIPS. FPCI and GRIPS have launched joint programs since last year, including public forums on various international issues and the Southeast Asia-Japan Track 1.5 dialogue. ASEAN is one of Japan's most important international partners. We believe it is very important to promote intellectual exchanges between Japanese and ASEAN researchers to deepen dialogue on issues of mutual interest, including politics, economics, and society, and to involve as many people as possible in discussions. In the second FPCI GRIPS Public Forum for fiscal year 2022, to be held today, distinguished researchers from ASEAN and Japan will discuss the current status and challenges of regional economic integration, such as RCEP, advantages and disadvantages for member countries, and the role of regional economic integration in stabilizing regional economies from pandemics and geopolitical frictions. I myself have the opportunity to be involved in the RCEP negotiations in the Japanese government at the launch of the RCEP negotiations in the early 2010s and in the final stages of the negotiations after 2017. I'm very happy the RCEP entered into force in early 2022 after negotiations based on the request of industry, universities, and research institutes. And with the entry into force of the RCEP agreement, we are moving forward toward the realization of a regional economic sphere that will account for approximately 30% of the world GDP, total trade and population, and will be larger than NAFTA, the EU, and the CPTPP. RCEP will improve market access and put in place rules in a wide range of areas, such as intellectual property and economic commerce among diverse countries at different stages of development and with different institutions in order to promote regional trade and investment and streamline supply chains. The realization of RCEP in the midst of protectionist measures taken by some countries against the background of the US-China confrontation and the COVID-19 crisis is of great significance in promoting the liberalization and facilitation of trade and investment in the East Asian region. At the same time, other regional economic architectures need to be taken into account when promoting regional economic integration and regional cooperation in the Indo-Pacific region. For example, the CPTPP, which entered into force at the end of 2018, is a mega FTA that aims to provide a higher level of market access and rules development than RCEP, and together with RCEP, will contribute to stabilizing the economic order in the Indo-Pacific region. The expansion of the CPTPP membership is in the future is an important issue. The Indo-Pacific Economic Forum, what we call IPEF, launched in May 2022, is another important regional economic architecture under which the United States will work with partner countries in the Indo-Pacific region to contribute to economic integration and economic development in Asia. In the midst of geopolitical upheavals, such as the US-China confrontation, pandemics, and Russia's invasion of Ukraine, I look forward to a lively exchange of views between ASEAN and Japanese experts on the role that RCEP and other regional economic architectures should play in advancing regional economic integration and regional cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. In closing, I hope that the ASEAN and Japanese audience who participated in today's public forum will continue to participate in future events, such as the public forum co-organized by the FPCI and GRIPS. Thank you very much for your attention. Terima kasih.
Thank you for your kind remarks, Professor Shinoda. And ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let us start today's discussion. Allow me to invite our moderator, Dr. Maxensius Trisambodo, researcher at National Research and Innovation Agency, BRIN. To Dr. Maxensius, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Ciara. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. And yeah, it is very great that we have 4 speakers here that we are going to discuss on the taking stock of RCEP, Scorecard, and other regional economic architectures. So for the first panelists, we have Diana Kurniasari. This is a director of ASEAN Negotiation, Directorate General of International Trade Negotiation, Ministry of Trade, the Republic of Indonesia. The second panelist is Juwita Muhammad. She's a director of Economic and Business Unit, Director of Research Institute for Democracy and Economic Affairs in Malaysia. The third panelist, we have also Professor Mi Uba. He's a professor of international relations at Kanagawa University. And last but not least, we also have Mr. Nguyen Ang Dong, the Director, Department for General Economic Issues and Integration Studies, Central Institute for Economic Management. So I think, we already know that we already established regional regional comprehensive economic partnership, RCEP. It's a long way to go. Yeah, RCEP was signed in November 2020, and we hope that RCEP can be an instrument to rebuild the economy from the impact of pandemic. Although we noticed that Indonesia and Philippines have not ratified it, and then we also noticed that RCEP has always been compared with other comprehensive and progressive agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP. That's always in the discussions. And we also noticed that Vietnam and Singapore has signed the 2 agreements. So of course, the question is, we would like to know the current situation of RCEP. What's the progress and the update of the RCEP so far? And we would like to have comments and view. Yeah. For the first one, I would like to give opportunity to Ibu Juwita Muhammad. Would you mind to give your comment, please, Ibu Juwita? Time is yours.
Thank you so much for the question. It is indeed a very difficult question to answer because, again, Malaysia was also has just ratified it and is already a joining member of RCEP as early as March this year. So we are still looking at the impact of this new FTA in terms of business participation, not only among bigger firms, but also among smaller firms. So this has been an issue for any free trade agreements, whether it is actually applicable or it's actually translating into equal or fair access to market outside of the country. So again, that's number one. Number two, again, it's actually very important for governments in different countries, including Malaysia, to also communicate the processes and as well as the benefits and challenges of ratifying or joining any form of FTA. And this, again, includes RCEP. So again, as of now, we have not seen so much uptake from the businesses, especially among the SMEs. And this has always been a key component when we look at benefits gained and reaped by the businesses communities in Malaysia, especially for the MSMEs. So we, on the other hand, in Malaysia, we are apparently on track to ratify the CPTPP. There are 2 other outstanding bills that needs to be passed through the parliament by October this year, and we hope to send everything in terms of ratification by September. So again, looking back at these 2 giant free trade agreements, obviously they're 2 different they have 2 very different characteristics, but again, it goes back to the welfare gains reaped by countries. So again, we do know that for RCEP, Indonesia is set to ratify its membership by this year, and that Malaysia, along with Australia, Brunei, Cambodia, China, Japan, Laos, New Zealand, Singapore, South Korea, Thailand, and Vietnam have all completed their ratification processes. But I think the issue now is that when we look at papers, when we look at past findings or preliminary findings on CGE modeling and the welfare gains that's going to be reaped, we do see that these findings are presented in a 10-year stretch. So again, for Malaysia, this is still very new to us. And again, this is it's still the first year. So it's very hard to quantify the benefits in terms of export imports, in terms of welfare gains, in terms of employment. There are simulations out there, but again, it's in a 10-year trench. But what we do see that is a bit different with RCEP to that of CPTPP is that there is a gradual tariff rate reduction within different items in RCEP market access chapters. So again, the first year decrease might not be as significant as we want to for different countries, just because that some of the +1 partners of ASEAN do not have an existing bilateral framework, for example. So this is where the scheduling of the reduction of tariff rates might take a longer time period to have a significant impact on the members, as well as the 2 member countries as well as the other member countries. But I think due to the fact that there is an ASEAN centrality element to this, I do feel that again, with the ratification of RCEP, it is again a stepping stone towards something that is of a higher standard, even for ASEAN countries. We do see that this is a very good influence for ASEAN because some or most of our ASEAN countries, member countries, are already exceeding into RCEP or CPTPP or other bilateral FTAs with much more developed countries like the EU, for example. So this in itself is very healthy because it brings back a higher standard for free trade agreements in the medium to long term. But again, RCEP is again supposedly will reap the benefits that is twice as large as CPTPP. And again, there are many caveats to this, just because that it covers more countries and more, it covers a bigger market than the CPTPP itself. To date, it's bigger than the EU. It's one of the biggest out there. But again, it goes back to the commitments of the RCEP. It goes back to the coverage of the RCEP. And I do hope that in the near future that there will be reviews of the RCEP for an upgrade that will also include, again, not just traditional trade chapters, but also non-traditional trade chapters. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Juwita, for raising very interesting point regarding the progress, yeah, from the Malaysian side, that we noticed that still a lot of things need to be prepared, yeah, even though so still need kind of what is discussion at the parliament and also the other agents, especially small medium enterprises and so on. So, Professor Mioba, what do you think about the progress so far? What can you conclude so far? Please, Professor.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to the very interesting and valuable discussion. So thank you so much. The first point is that the RCEP already entered into force in the January this year. So I think that we have to evaluate very positively this. The RCEP include the various the important clues and chapters like harmonization and ROC and digital and investment and so on. So I think the RCEP is a very important tool to sustain the free and open the trade system. So which has provided the economic prosperity since the early 1990s. But so on the other hand, so I want to point it out the situation around the RCEP has drastically changed now. So and then this affects the evaluation or the value of the RCEP itself. So from my point of view, for example, the Japanese government interest in the RCEP seems to be very decreasing. So this year, so for example is the first one is the escalation of the Sino-US strategic competition. So both sides eagerly implement several measures coming from the interest in the economic statecraft. So including the export control and so on. And then so the Quad is very advanced. So under by the strong support of the Biden administration, so in the current stage, the 4 countries show their will to mainly promote the economic and the functional cooperation, but its political implications are not inclusive like the RCEP. And then so we see the establishment of AUKUS, and their phenomena so just indicated that the escalation of the Sino-US strategic competition and its affect the geopolitical situation in the Indo-Pacific, including Southeast Asia and Japan. And so we see the IPEF and establishment of IPEF, so new framework. And so the Russia-Ukraine war occurred this year, and all of them so very strongly affect on the evaluation of the RCEP. And then so because these so events shaking the foundation of the free and open trade system, as well as the economic international liberal order. So rather, I think the RCEP should take the very important role to sustain such a free and open trade system. And then so the Japan and the ASEAN country so tried to contribute to the implementation and the enhancement of the RCEP. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Very interesting to hear your comment about the RCEP. Yeah, we need to do the good way, yeah, to make the RCEP good, well implemented, yeah, and to keep free and open trade regime that we need to pursue. Yeah. And then, of course, you also mentioned the challenge. Yeah? The challenge under the current situation is not easy in the global level. So, but of course, we all the country need to do their best, yeah, to commit, yeah, to this partnership. It is interesting to see how also the comment from Mr. Nguyen, regarding maybe the situation in Vietnam, actually, how the implementation of RCEP, and we also understand that Vietnam also part of the CPTPP. Can you give a comment on that, Mr. Nguyen Ando? Please, time is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity for being here today. I think in terms of the RCEP, we have to recall from the past 10 years that when Vietnam started the negotiation of major FTAs with the partners, including the TPP led by the US, and also the FTA with the EU, and also the RCEP and TPP and RCEP at the time were 2 out of the 3 major FTAs in the world, and the other one was the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, I think TTIP. So I think Vietnam, and with that approach, I think we managed to have to diversify the relationship with the trade with the partners. So it does not look like the FTA, including the RCEP, will induce the significant trade diversion of Vietnam toward any single partner. That is one thing to emphasize. And the second thing was that by negotiating the major FTAs, even the RCEP could incorporate the contents similar to those in the TPP, such as those related to e-commerce and intellectual properties and things like that. And so with that type of approach, it's easier for Vietnam to convince the domestic stakeholders that, okay, we could proceed with the FTA provisions related to e-commerce with the SOEs and things. And so that have paved the way for the implementation and the ratification of the RCEP alongside other FTAs. So at this stage, I think I personally think that the progress toward RCEP is quite mixed in Vietnam. On the one hand, we were very fast on preparing a number of regulations, such as the circular by the Ministry of Industry and Trade, guiding the root origin certifications under RCEP. There was also other effort by Vietnam to have to revise the law on intellectual properties, the law, and procurement related regulations, and also and we were also active in conducting research. I think, for example, the World Bank also has concrete research on the impacts of RCEP in Vietnam at the both macro and micro level. And I also led the various research related to promoting paperless trading in the Asia Pacific. That also draw the implications from the paperless trading provisions under the RCEP. So in terms of that, we have been quite active. But one of the most instrumental regulations about the tariff rate has not been issued even at this stage. Usually in Vietnam, the practice is that after the FTA, we need a government decree to promote to issue the preferential tariff schedule under that respective FTA. But for the RCEP, we haven't got the government decree yet. So at this stage, the traders are still concerned about the timing of the preference they would get in the future. So I think that is something quite mixed, but I think at the implementation from the statistics, we could see that the progress has been quite good in the sense that we have expanded export and imports with the RCEP members, and some at the double-digit level in the past 7 months of the year. So it has been quite good, and it had contributed to significant export recovery in Vietnam. And also, it have induced more foreign direct investment in Vietnam. And in the past, in the first 7 months of the year, the FDI statistics already surpassed the level before the pandemic. So that is also a strong recovery. But looking forward, I think there is still some room for improvement with the RCEP structures. On the one hand, I agree with Dr. Muhammad in her sharing earlier about the need to upgrade the RCEP and potential. And I think there could be areas like the dispute settlement mechanisms. We need to make it more binding rather than put it like in the soft language as currently. And on the other hand, I think the more important issue is how to promote the ASEAN centrality in the RCEP implementation. We've seen that as ASEAN countries have made significant effort. Indonesia, Vietnam, and other countries have worked hard to during the negotiation process of RCEP, but at the implementation level, we haven't seen enough effort at this stage. So that's where I think I try to make it provocative at this stage that the ASEAN should do more. I stop here. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. It's interesting, yeah, that you also underline that the growing trade, yeah, between Vietnam and other RCEP member countries. Yeah, I think that is good. And also you raise also one of the importance in terms of policy on with regard with the tariff policy that need to be supported by government policy. Yeah. So from the Vietnam perspective, it seemed that RCEP quite good. Yeah. In at least, yeah, from the trade point of view, that showing increasing among the members. And finally, I would like to have also comment from Ibu Dina Kurniasari. What do you think, Ibu Dina, regarding the RCEP from the Indonesians' economy or government perspective? How far, how the update that you can rise on this? Please, Ibu Dina, time is yours.
Thank you, Pak, for giving me the screens, and good afternoon, everyone. It's very highly appreciated for me to be invited in these special events, particularly in the RCEP issues, since the RCEPs initially chair and also initiated by Indonesia. So it will be important for us as Indonesia to give a very strong commitments regarding the implementation of RCEP. In fact, 1 hour, if I'm not mistaken, 1 hour ago, we just finished our meetings, the second RGC's meeting, RCEP Joint Committee meetings. The Joint Committee meeting is the special unit established to supervise and monitoring the implementation of RCEP. And Indonesia still become the chair of the RGC meetings. Regarding our discussion today for the implementation of RCEPs, as all the distinguished participants already aware, Indonesia is still in the process of ratifications. And it is expected that at the end of August, the 30th of August, Indonesia can finalize the ratification process. And then afterward will be followed by the notification to the ASEAN Secretariat, and then we can issue our legal enactments or the issuing regulations for the implementation of RCEPs. Regarding the benefits for Indonesia, I believe we have a very many sectors to be considered as the beneficial sectors for Indonesia, particularly for improving our regional value chains. We can also improve our competitiveness. We can also increase our market access in the trade in goods, in services, and also investments. And I believe regarding the RCEP itself, as the major or the mega FTAs in the world currently, Indonesia also play a very vital roles in driving the global trade under the RCEPs, because the ambitions in RCEPs also address not only the concerns for the ASEANs, but also the concern from the ASEAN, which consists of the developing countries, developed countries, and also LDCs. Versus the intentions of developed countries from the AFPs, particularly from the Matra dialogue partners like Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and so on and so forth. So it will be important for balancing our competitiveness, balancing our benefits, and also improving the regional value chains towards RCEPs. So in this regard, once again, even though Indonesia is still in the process of ratifications, it will be important for all of us to underline that Indonesia still holds a very vital roles in RCEP, and also still holding a very big commitments towards the implementation of RCEPs. And in this particular events, I also would like to emphasize one more thing, regarding the implementation of RCEPs. There is also a very major issues currently regarding the RCEP Secretariat. I believe that maybe several of us already noticed that the RCEP Secretariat also play a vital roles in regarding the implementation of RCEPs, since the RCEP Secretariat will hold as a special unit to conducted a technical and administrative support for the RCEP implementations, and also conducted the political advice for the RGC's activities. But in the juncture, RGC still having discussions in the best location for the RCEP Secretariat. So in this regard, Indonesia also would like to ask for further support for all the participants for our intentions to establish RCEP Secretariat in Indonesia, in Jakarta in particular. So it will be important for us to have the same understanding, the same consensus to make Jakarta not only the capital of the ASEAN, but also the capital of the RCEP as the mega FTAs in Indonesia. So it will be important for us to ensure the implementation of RCEP, not only from the utilization of the RCEP implementation, but also to ensure the establishment of RCEP Secretariat as the supporting unit will be established in timely manner. I think that's all for me, Pak. Terima kasih. Thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance to share my views. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Dina. Very, very interesting to see how Indonesian governments try to endorse the establishment and RCEP in terms of administrative, and you also mentioned that we are still ratifying the RCEP into our law. But I think we really understand that now some progress has been there, and we are still setting up the institutions, and are the necessary policy there. So at the same time, we also noticed that CPTTP also is there, and both RCEP and CPTTP, we expect that it can be what is the trade and economic infrastructures in developing the Indo-Pacific regional economic cooperations. So I would like to have a comment from Professor Miuba. How do you see both RCEP and CPTTP in the context of Indo-Pacific economic infrastructure? How do you see the two arrangements here? Please, Professor.
Yeah, so some people tend to argue that CPTPP versus RCEP argument. So, but I don't think that fundamentally, so these two framework had not so a big difference. So both of them could and will so sustain the free and open multilateral trade system so in the world. So it could be the it could be the building blocks of the multilateral trade system. So, but I think so we and I can explain. We can we can express we can capture. I'm sorry. We can capture the two keywords. So to explain the difference between the CPTPP and RCEP. The first one, the CPTPP's keywords is a high standard. So it means that the level of the liberalization so set by the CPTPP is very high, and the scope is broader than the RCEP. And then so it's a little bit difficult for the some of the developing countries so to join in. But the RCEP, as for RCEP, the key words is inclusive. It means that so RCEP the level is not so low, I don't think so. But the level of the liberalization and the regulations are level lower than the CPTPP, and then so all of the ASEAN countries join in. The China and the South Korea and Japan join in, and Australia and New Zealand join in. They are very inclusive one. And then so I think that the two frameworks should be and can be complemented with each other. So it depends on the level of the economic development. So and then so I think these two frameworks could be the complemented. So and then so I think this I don't doubt about this point. But on the other hand, some people pointed out that now we are facing the Sino-US strategic competition, and some people talk about decoupling or something. But I think so if the two countries competition bring about a part of decoupling, or the in short an encapsulated decoupling, it means that the decoupling in the very limited area. So the new and emerging technology and the very crucial so items like a semiconductor. So such a very limited spheres we can see the decoupling. But so overall, so I think so globalization itself disappears. Globalization itself does not deteriorate now. And then so the RCEP and the CPTPP and should and could promote such a globalization and to control the globalization. So I think it is very important. So because the globalization itself bring about many issues, so like climate change and the violation of the human rights, and especially the labor and the immigrant labors. So and then so the widening the economic disparity among peoples, and then so and we should so control the globalization, and then so we need the rule-based frameworks like the RCEP and the CPTPP, and then so I think so these two both of the two frameworks are very important to overcome such issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Very interesting. You raise a very important point, Professor, regarding the issue on the standard, on the scope, on the inclusiveness, and then yeah, there's also possibility for kind of decoupling, complemented, and then of course finally you also raise the issue on the how the two arrangement can measure the externality of the globalization itself. That's quite important here. And I would like to have a comment from Ibu Juwita. How do you see the two arrangement, Ibu Juwita? Can you have a view on that, please?
Thank you, sir. As mentioned before, they are two different free trade agreements with different partners. There are overlapping partners between these two arrangements. And again, as mentioned before, the level of commitments are different and the chapters are also different. But what I found to be very interesting between RCEP and CPTPP, and this needs to be highlighted, that if under CPTPP, most of the chapters would go back to the ISDS chapter, to the investor state dispute settlement chapter. But for RCEP, you see that there's a lot of exemptions. For example, if there's a breach of contract in e-commerce, it doesn't go to arbitration. There's no penalization in that form because countries among RCEP countries are expected to work it among themselves. So there's not a very strong act of penalization in terms of arbitration. So I think, again, this is why it's quite, I feel it's able to garner support from so many different countries, from 15 countries. And at one point it was supposed to be 16 with India. But again, I feel that, again, it's the level of commitment. And again, if you just look at the chapters, CPTPP is much more encompassing, including labor chapters, labor chapter that is not in RCEP, including environment chapter, including as well issues, again, on e-commerce, but with deeper commitments and deeper needs for reforms. So there is a competition chapter for RCEP, but for CPTPP, there's a more exploratory and more extensive clauses on state-owned enterprises and how they should behave as well. And I think this is again something that is of a very high standard, looking at our region and how state-owned enterprises behave in our economies and how they do tend to affect competition in different sectors within a certain economy and within a certain block. So again, these are the two things that I see being very different. We shouldn't treat these two as the same. Yes, they are free trade agreements, but I do see that in the future, if RCEP is to retain its value, again, in the medium to long term, it needs to be upgraded. And when I talk about upgrade, it needs to include other non-traditional trade chapters like labor, like the environment chapter, as well as chapters on IPR, which is not yet highlighted in RCEP. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Juwita. Very interesting. And I would like to have maybe further comment or elaboration from Ibu Dina regarding actually how actually CPTPP in the context of Indonesia, that's also one of the founding members of RCEP. Actually, how do you see the CPTPP in terms of all the standard scope and what actually we can learn from the other arrangement? Can you give a comment on this, Ibu Dina, please? Time is yours.
For giving me the screen again, I believe to compare between the RCEP and also the CPTPP is quite similar, ya Pak ya. It's not like apple to apple comparisons, because if we also noted that unlike the CPTPP, the RCEP actually doesn't consist of many regulation like SOEs. The SOEs is only a small several articles under the competition, if I'm not mistaken, and also there is no regulations, or there is no specific regulations or chapters regulate the environment and also labor standards. But I believe the differences between the CPTPP and also the RCEPs actually will be reflected on the commitments of the parties. I already mentioned earlier that the RCEPs actually build upon the commitments amongst the developing countries, and also LDCs. So it's like a very comprehensive, modern, but yet it's very qualified. even though in terms of rules, there is many rules that not have been regulated under the RCEP. But we can say that the RCEP is a very comprehensive one, since it also have a very many regulations. It's very trade facilitative amongst the member states, and also it will improve the regional value chains. And I believe that it can be become a very good model for the rest of the world, how to make the landing zone agreements between a very with a quite a big gap development between or amongst the member states, amongst the parties. So it will be important for us. I believe the CPTPP is mostly consists of countries that have the same objectivities, but not like the RCEP. RCEP is very complex, so I believe to compare once again, the RCEP and also the CPTPP will not, it's very unsimilar. And I also would like to address that even though that there is many differences, RCEP and also CPTPP can be also considered as the Indo-Pacific economic infrastructures, because both agreement also serve as the basis to strengthening the regional cooperations and regional ties in the regions currently. And RCEP, I believe, also provide us with a very clear rule-based trading framework for trade in goods, services, and also investments. Even though once again, all the regulation, all the commitment is not as high as the CPTPP. And I also would like to emphasize that RCEP also provide us with the special and differential treatment involving our not least our unfortunate member. And we also have ecotex chapters to give capacity building and also economic cooperations among ourselves. I believe that's my point, Pak, regarding the comparison between the CPTPP and also the RCEP. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Dina. Very interesting, yeah, to see how that, yeah, you underline they are not kind of apple to apple comparisons. They have their own, yeah, their own kind of specific attentions, yeah, in the arrangement. I think that's the point that I know. So I would like to have a comment from Mr. Nguyen regarding the issue on how do you see the functions and the role of regional economic framework in addressing the growing global condition now, such as energy and food crisis, yeah, and then this bring kind of inflation pressure in many countries. How the impact or the effectiveness of the agreement implementation itself? Can you have a comment on that, Mr. Nguyen, please?
Okay. Thank you for that. And I think before I go to that, I think I would like to add about the RCEP and CPTPP, because Vietnam is in part is the signatory to both of these agreements and is implementing both of these. I think basically the RCEP and RCEP, RCEP and the CPTPP can be considered as the arrangement that provide both diverse approach to members. So for some enterprise, they can meet the standard under CPTPP. I think they can find the flexible arrangement under RCEP more appealing. And vice versa, if the enterprise have big scale, big capacity, and good experience, they can explore the CPTPP and penetrate the markets there. So so we have if we have both, certainly we offer the diverse opportunities for firms. And I think these two things are also mutually reinforcing. And we recall that after the conclusion of RCEP, I think the interest in the CPTPP also grown. We start to see a number of economies applying for the CPTPP in 2021. So that is also some sort of like mutually reinforcing. And the last one I want to talk about this is that we need to recall the Annex 1 of the APEC leader statement in 2016. In that, they talk about the free trade area for Asia Pacific, and in that the FTAP, and so the FTA for the whole APEC region. And in that, they said we would aim for the FTA, for that FTA, but we are not going there directly. We need to build via intermediate pathways such as the TPP at that time and the RCEP. So I think both of these can offer the way toward the future FTA of the region, of the Asia Pacific region. So that is something we should be mindful of. And I think in the current context with the crisis related to energy, with the food price, I think the FTA have done a good job in the sense that it creates the channel for connecting the market, the food surplus and energy surplus market with the food deficit and the energy deficit countries. So that also help alleviate the pressures, because if we face the if apart from the disruption in logistics due to the conflict in other part of the world, there is still a conflict in terms, there is still some sort of mistrust among the regional economies, then the impacts on the regional energy price, on the regional food price would have been much larger. But at this stage, we have seen that the food price hikes, the energy price hike have started have started to slow down. So at least that is something we need. We start to see that the FTA have worked to ensure that that kind of price increase will not be self-sustained. And the second thing is that the FTAs have created more economic benefits and more economic incentives for the stakeholder in the region so that they can engage in trade. And with that, the economic cost and the economic benefits from any kind of disruptions related decision would make the policymakers of those economic concerns would have to be make more concrete calculations before they act. And so we used to think that okay, the energy price can increase up for rapidly and with some very devastating scenarios. But after some time, we start to see that the economic benefits, the calculations of the firms at the micro level have reversed some of the impacts of that price increase, and that is the one we are living now. And that kind of economic momentum, economic world cannot be sustained without the implementation of the FTAs, including the CPTPP and the RCEP. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nguyen. And I would like to have also comment from Ibu Juwita. So actually, how do you see the role of RCEP in easing the impact of the uncertainty at the global level now? How do you see any opportunity we are promoting RCEP in this case? Can you give a comment on that, Ibu Juwita, please?
Thank you. That is actually a very important question because it goes back to supply chain disruptions, as well as the post-pandemic shock that we are facing. I feel that there is value to the ratification of both RCEP and CPTPP in alleviating non-tariff measures, for example, that would contribute to the increase of cost of business. So again, as much as possible, if RCEP and CPTPP are able to streamline non-tariff measures, tariff measures, as well as other paper processing in terms of trade, I think it would reduce the cost of businesses to do business, costs to trade, and this theoretically would spur more growth in trade. But I think that in this endemic phase, what is of concern is that even 8 months into the endemic phase, we're already in August, we're going to be entering September. We do see that the global value chains have not been recalibrated as quickly as we hoped it to be. To a certain extent, RCEP and CPTPP would enable a much more, would lead to the creation of a more sustainable framework in terms of trade reforms. But I do also feel that there are other fundamental issues that each country in these blocks need to think about. So for now, of course, the first is our ports and our facilities of the ports. There are a lot of backlogs in terms of containers, shipping containers. And because of the ports facilities as well as labor shortages, you see that this backlog is not going to rectify itself in the next few months or so. So I do see that this recalibration has a lot to do with different factors, and that RCEP and CPTPP may be able to soften the blow, or it is helpful to a certain extent. But we also have to look at what's really happening on the ground in terms of disruptions among the supply chains. What is of another concern is that the longer the supply chain disruptions take place, this will impact, again, GDP growth, not just for our member countries here in this region, but also beyond this country. So it will, again, fuel the inflationary assumptions or projections that's already going to be imminent in the first few months of next year. So it's a chicken and egg issue. We do want the GVCs to be recalibrated so that further growth can be observed. But we do see that there are fundamental issues now that will not necessarily make the GVCs recalibrate itself in the next few months. So again, as much as possible, if the RCEP and CPTPP communities can come together and have more capacity building and have more cooperation in terms of capacity building and technical upgrading, I do feel that it can make a dent in alleviating the disruptions in our supply chains. Thank you.
Interesting. Thank you, Ibu Juwita, for raising very important issue regarding the role of RCEP in dealing with the global uncertainty. So I think this will be the last question that I address to Professor Mioba. Professor, as the Indo-Pacific economic framework is still very minimum in policy details, what are your expectations, and how will this framework be different compared to RCEP and CPTPP? Please, Professor.
Yeah, it's a very difficult question. So yes, I know. So there are very negative evaluation on the IPEF, but Japanese point of view, the IPEF has a potential to be a useful framework. The IPEF is composed of the 4 pillars. You know, the first is a connected economy, and the second is a resilient economy. And the third one is a clean economy, and the fourth pillar is the fair economy. So all of the topics, all of the pillars, including the many topics, are very important. So generally important for us. So not only for Japan, not only for the Indo-Pacific. And then so to build a framework to talk about and set some rule on the various topics which the IPEF pointed out is very important. And I think so the IPEF has a very big potential and some potential, I'm sorry. So the important point is that not only Japan, but also the other countries like India, LOK, and Fiji, and 7 ASEAN countries have joined it. So you know, so the India and ASEAN countries inherently avoid taking side between the China and the United States. So their join in the IPEF indicated that this country also shares interest about the making new rules. So, or rule-based regional economic order. So, and then, and they participate specific project as long as they find their own benefit in them. So IPEF has adopted a very flexible approach. So this is and also the benefit to all the participants, so the parties. So, but of course, the many analysts of the effectiveness of the framework because it's a lack of the market access element. However, the IPEF could provide us with a forum in which we can examine the new and important topics beyond the market access and collaborate in the making high standard rule about them. So on the other hand, so the parties, including ASEAN country and Japan, have to make APEC more attractive by promoting specific effective cooperation and dialogue and making a concrete outcome in this framework. So of course, so I have to point out some concerns about the IPEF. The big one is how to keep the motivation of the party. So the IPEF, so as I said, so it's a lack of the market access. So how to keep the motivation? So the many countries, and especially in the developing countries, so in the IPEF. And the second and the biggest and the serious one is how about the after Biden administration? So I mean, the IPEF was set, so realized and by the very strong support and intention by the Biden administration. And then so, but now the Biden administration is in a very difficult position in the domestic politics. So, and then so I think that for the economic framework to be effective, it must to be sustained at the minimum. And then so I'm so worried about the after Biden administration. So this is a very political argument. I know it's not an economical one, but and I think such as political uncertainty so will shake the prospect of and the potential of the IPEF. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Professor, for sharing your idea about the situation about this. I think this is excellent. And yeah, I think we finished our discussion from all the panelists. I think this is very great. We have a very good and rich discussion on kind of important questions, yeah, about this issue. So now we are moving to the next session regarding questions from the audience. We would like to thank you for all good questions that coming from the audience. Okay, I will start with the first question. The first question is come from Jae-young Sim from USS South Korea. The question is, what is your comment on the IPEF, which has element that RCEP does not address? Actually, this has been briefly discussed with Professor Mi before, but can you elaborate this, Professor, or maybe others panelists can address this, please? Any panelists can give maybe Professor Miuba, can you give response on this?
I'm sorry, I missed and so many questions, and then so
okay.
So which one?
Okay, I will repeat the question, Professor. What is your comment on the IPEF, which has element that RCEP does not address? Yeah, is there any comment, Professor, or maybe?
Yes. So well. So and then so this question means that so the IPEF and there is various the topics, but some of them so RCEP did not do, so does not do, and how to do? Yeah. So it's it's great. I think so. And then especially, so I evaluate the RCEP, so IPEF, so including the fair economy, so including anti-corruption, and they're related to some the human rights issues, so of the labors. So and then so the second one is of course, so the clean economy. So it is very important. And then so the RCEP also have a clause of the chapter of e-commerce and the digital economy. But I think that the level of this regulation or the rule is not so high. So, but the IPEF so will IPEF said the digital economy issue as one of the key issues. So in this framework, and then so I think of course so it's a very problematic. There's some problematic difficulties. So to promote these framework parallelly, but I think that there is a potential to collaborate with each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for the answer. So there's a second question come from Mahatma Yudhishthira from Tsinghua University in China. Maybe I would like to have a comment from Ibu Dina. The question is, how can ASEAN harmonize different regional economic frameworks, since each of them have different own uniqueness on it? Or should we expect another new double effect coming from different framework? Maybe Ibu Dina, can you give a comment on this, please, Ibu Dina?
Thank you, Pak, for the question. So the question is how Indonesia can manage to harmonize different commitment under ASEAN +1. I believe RCEP is a very good model as the answer of your questions, Pak, because actually the RCEP is the commitment to harmonize the ASEAN +1 and also the internal ASEAN's commitments is a very good examples of that. And once again, I already emphasized earlier that not only harmonize the ASEAN +1 commitment, so it's like to harmonize the spaghetti bowl effect, yeah. Because Indonesia, not only Indonesia but ASEAN have so many commitments in place currently. So RCEP is harmonizing all the regulation and rules in the regions, and also try to make the regulation more trade facilitative for all the parties. But the important thing that we must also recall, not only the harmonize, but RCEP is the agreement that address the concerns and also the sensitivities faced by LDCs, developing countries, and also developed countries. It's like the what I call is the landing zone agreements. But even though we call it as the landing zone agreement, but it will not undermine the commitment or undermine the quality of the RCEP itself. But I can say that the RCEP address all the sensitivities, address all the difficulties faced by all the parties. Something like that, Pak. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bu Dina. So this the last questions come from Kotaro Katsuki from Japanese Foreign Ministry. I hope Ibu Juwita or Mr. Nguyen can address these questions. The question is, RCEP will be open to other countries after years, yeah. And what are the prospects for new countries in joining? Yeah. And recently, the president of Sri Lanka is starting his interest in RCEP. How will country like Sri Lanka, and other country in Southeast Asia fit into RCEP? Please, maybe Ibu Juwita or maybe Mr. Nguyen, you can have a comment on this.
Yeah. Can I?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Please.
Thank you for this question. I think basically I mean, RCEP and even TPP or CPTPP at this stage are not meant to be the like a trade block for those concerned. So they are still like leave open the possibility for new members to join. And so even for RCEP, and I also agree with the sharing by Professor Oba earlier about the word inclusive, because that means that we are not, this arrangement is not going to be to block against the interest of any new members. And I think so the countries and economies from the South Asian part is also important. And we also need to recall that India was also part of the RCEP right from the beginning, but and now some provision under the RCEP still leave the possibility for India to join at any time. So that is the second aspect that we need to consider. And the third one is that there are, I mean, the Asian countries have their own market, they have their own some segments, and they have own competitiveness in certain products. For example, I mean, for the people in Vietnam and the companies in Vietnam now are exploring the potential of trade in halal products and services. And so, and in South Asia, in South Asian countries, I think it's still part of the world where the Vietnamese companies have not penetrated that much. So that is also something of a potential for Vietnam. But I'm sure other countries are also finding those parts of Asia as a potential market to join the RCEP. But the key thing is, like, on a reciprocity basis, we need to negotiate, and that's the main hurdle rather than the welcoming words, I think.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. Maybe Ibu Juwita, would you have a short comment on this question, please?
Sure, that's a very short comment, because I think now there's more discussion on the accession of new potential partners in CPTPP, because again, the CPTPP standards are quite high, and that you would need to have a consensus among the ratified partners. So that's with the CPTPP. So I think with RCEP, because again, compared to CPTPP, the commitments are relatively diluted and are relatively, there is a commitment there, but again, it's not as deep as the CPTPP countries. So again, I don't see it being an issue, just as long as partner countries are able to reach a certain standard that is already highlighted by RCEP negotiations and RCEP standards. I don't think that is an issue here. Yeah, so I think the partnership and the new potential partners would have a more controversial discussion around CPTPP, but not so much on RCEP. I hope that kind of answered the question. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Ibu Juwita. Yeah, and I think this is the last question. This is interesting question because it's come from our friend from Timor-Leste, from Sergio Santos from UNTL. Maybe I would like to have comment from Ibu Dina. Yeah, the question is as follows. Yeah, for Timor-Leste, RCEP and CPTPP is quite new. Yeah, and the question is, what suppose we to do our trade, and what the what is Spiker encourage us to do in terms of economic to face with market competition ahead. So what your suggestion, Ibu Dina, regarding this question? Please, time is yours.
The screens and I noted the questions regarding the interest of Timor-Leste to join the ASEAN. I would like to say the ASEAN, not the RCEP, ya Pak, because to join the ASEAN itself is quite difficult for them. But we already give a political support for Timor-Leste to join the ASEAN, and currently we also already done the fact-finding missions to Timor-Leste to find out their readiness to join the ASEAN. And even though that we see that there is lack of the capabilities and also very minimum infrastructures and so on and so forth, but ASEAN strong together to support the Timor-Leste to join Timor-Leste as a part of the ASEAN's family. And currently, we also would like to conduct the capacity building program for the Timor-Leste officials to have internship programs in the major of the government officials in Indonesia, and also particularly in Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and other ministries as well. And we also giving them capacity building regarding the way for the official to ensure to fulfill the commitment under the three major economic agreements: ASEAN Trade in Goods Agreement, ASEAN's Services Agreements, and also Investment AKIA. So this is the three major agreement in ASEAN that the Timor-Leste officials still need to more time to upgrading themselves in terms of capability and also capacity to fulfill the commitments. If we speak about the RCEP itself, I believe it must be we can supervise all the process in step-by-step approach, ya Pak. So ASEAN first, and then if they would like to then have intentions to join the RCEP, I believe it is going to be a very quite windy or and difficult road, but it's not impossible. But currently, we already have noted the intention from the Hong Kong for join as the RCEP family, RCEP parties. And in this regard, regarding the accession, I also must recall the article one of the article in the RCEP agreement that Article 20.4 in the RCEP agreements it stated that we must wait until 18 months until the RCEP agreement fully entry into force. And as you also all the participants are also alert that the RCEP already entry into force by 1st Jan this year by the 6 countries of ASEAN and 4 countries of IFP's countries, and the rest will join afterwards, and also Indonesia and Philippines still now finalizing our ratification process. So for the Hong Kong, they need to wait until 18 months until the full entry into force of the RCEP, and until the RGCs, which already conducted the second meetings today, 1 hour before this event's conducted, to adopt the accessions program or accessions rules. And it have not been discussed intensively in the RGC agenda, but we strongly support that RCEP can be jointly open for any other countries, including Timor-Leste. But at the time being, the homework, the big task for the Timor-Leste is not to join the RCEP, but how to join the ASEAN in a very effective and efficient way. Thank you, Pak.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Diana, for excellent answer.
Diana,
so yeah, we are, I think, running out of time. So yeah, I think back to our topic. Yeah, I think RCEP already moved forward. Yeah, and we need to keep the momentum. Yeah, and we need to take care. The baby is growing well and healthy in the coming years, and yeah, this is our duty. So again, I would like to thank you so much to all the speaker. We have 4 great speakers today this afternoon. Yeah, I think we learned a lot from all of you. Yeah, a lot of good insight coming from all of you. I would like to thank you to all of you for your insightful on the issue. And I would like to pass this to Ibu Kiara Mulia, please.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Maxensius, for moderating today's discussion. And again, thank you to all of the speakers for sharing your incredible insights. Today, we are very pleased to host more than 150 participants, both joining from our Zoom room and our YouTube channel. I believe that all of the participants that are tuning here today have had a fruitful discussion and gained new knowledge from all of our speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, this marks the end of our second event of the FPCI GRIPS Virtual Public Forum series. Today's event is available for rewatch on FPCI's official YouTube channel at Secretariat FPCI. Thank you, everyone, and see you at our next event. Thank you.